an essay, creative nonfiction. It's an essay that juxtaposes two things that happened in the summer of 1974. It was the summer I discovered my father's porn, and it was also the summer that 5 little girls disappeared from Jacksonville, Florida. I'm going to read some sections that are short. The first section that I won't be reading talks about me walking to the convenience store and first seeing posters. And then the second section that I'm also not reading talks about my ritual with my dad's porn. Okay. The summer and early fall of 1974 replays like a gritty movie in my head. A 70s era Lumet or Scorsese, elements of cinema verite but stylized, heightened. The scene opens with George McRae's Rock Your Baby playing on the Predators' radios, driving through neighborhoods, seeking appraising opportunity. Cross-cut this with a scene of me flipping through my father's porn magazines while that same song plays on my portable radio in an otherwise quiet house. Then the jangle of bells are heard over Gordon Lightfoot's Sundown as Jean Marie Schoen, Virginia Helm, and Rebecca Green in split screen each enter a different neighborhood store. The eerie song playing from radios behind the counters. They walk toward the ice cream freezer, the candy aisle, and soft drink cooler, respectively. The screen splits once more at the bottom to show Annette and Mylette Anderson alone in their home, Annette making lemonade while Mylette sits on the floor playing with her dolls. And then one by one, Jean, Virginia, Rebecca, their small hands push open the glass door, the bell jangling once again as they walk out with their purchases towards a glare into which they disappear. It's only Annette in the frame then, her small hand turning off the radio on her own counter when she sees a car pull up outside. The abductions didn't happen concurrently as they do in my brain's montage, but the timeline of the girls' disappearances are close enough that looking back it feels as though they vanished within moments of each other. Time folds in on itself in memory, or at least in mine. I compress the mundane days of those 3 months, the endless hours of Watergate hearings which preempted our favorite soap operas and game shows. I compress the same old dinners of tuna casserole and corned beef hash, endless bologna sandwiches, fighting with my sisters over every little thing. I compress the too many mornings waking up to an oppressive heat that permeated our cinder block house with no air conditioning. Stagnant as a tomb, the dust mote suspended in shafts of light unmoving. Those are still shots. But the feature film is composed of songs played and replayed relentlessly on the radio, the discovery of my father's magazines, walks to the convenience store, and those disappearing girls, all of it recalled in a grainy and tungsten hue. Jean Marie Schoen, age 9, disappeared on July 21st while walking to a convenience store at the corner of 19th and Pearl, only 2 blocks away from her grandmother's house with whom she was visiting at the time. Her mother said she would have never gone willingly. She was too feisty a child. No one saw her leave with or talking to anyone. Or perhaps, as the newspaper pointed out, someone saw something and didn't know they were seeing anything at all. 11 days later, the Anderson sisters, Annette 11 and Mylette 6, went missing from their home in Ocean Way, a north side area of Jacksonville. It was expected they'd be home alone only briefly, their mother and older sister leaving to care for a sick relative. Their father, a commercial fisherman, was expected to be home not long after they left, but he had engine trouble and arrived much later than expected. When he returned home to an empty house, save their little dog barking from behind the closed door of one of the bedrooms, Mr. Anderson assumed the girls were with their mother. It wasn't until she called home around 8 o'clock that it was discovered that the girls were missing. Neighbors reported seeing a car in their yard, but thought little of it. Virginia Helms disappeared on September 27th. She was 12, lived in the south side of town, and went missing walking to or from a convenience store at Beach Boulevard, only 10 minutes away from her home on Dean Road. And although there had been reports of young girls in the area being approached by 2 or 3 persons in a car, then threatened and followed home when they didn't get in the vehicle, no one recalls seeing anything suspicious surrounding her disappearance. No one recalled seeing anything at all. 19 days after Virginia went missing, Rebecca Ann Green disappeared from her Fairfield neighborhood. She had missed her bus that morning, and her mother allowed her to stay home. She walked to the store 6 blocks away to buy soft drinks. After she made the purchases, she left through a side door, saying goodbye to the butcher, telling him she'd see him later, and never made it home. There came a point that summer when we were reminded to avoid strangers, discouraged to be outside by ourselves, particularly not to go to the magic market alone. So we went in small groups, and suddenly what was once a regular part of our existence felt like a risky adventure. Walking with my older sisters and a couple of their friends to the store, I imagine us as brazen, as if daring a passerby to mess with us. Everything heightened, the broken glass more menacing, the palms a bit more wretched, the skies grayer. I could spot a bunny moving in the weeds yards away, a dead armadillo a block ahead. Vigilant, alert, I was on the lookout in case there was anything to report. When men in cars would holler at us, there was a sort of thrill. What if they tried to take us? What if they were a pervert? A word that had begun to be thrown around in conversations and in the news. I'd look at cars and their license tags, remembering details just in case someone went missing in our neighborhood, and I could say, "Yes, officer, I do remember a suspicious car. A gold Impala, a brown El Camino, a green Charger, license plate GR4 HLT. Yes, I remember what he looked like. He had shaggy hair and sideburns. He was smoking a cigarette. His beard was red. He was bald. He flicked his tongue at us like a snake. He said he'd give us a ride. He said we were ripe for the picking. He was wearing an orange shirt. He was wearing no shirt. He was tow-headed and wore wire-rimmed glasses. His dashboard was furry. He wore a hat that said, 'Make mine Chevy.' He was sucking on a Tootsie Pop. He called us abominations. His van had a dent in the side. His van had wild horses painted on it and blue-black exhaust. He looked like that guy on The Rookies. He looked like a man I know from church. He looked like no one I've ever seen before. His eyes were blue. They were green. They were bluish green. His eyes were the darkest brown you could imagine. And officer, I swear he looked right at me. On Sundays after church, my aunt, uncle, and cousin often came to lunch at our house, while my mom and sisters and I were busy putting the leaf in the table, filling the tea glasses with ice. My daddy and uncle exchanged their dirty magazines. They weren't particularly open about it, but neither did they take great pains to hide what they were doing. The magazines were kept face down, but of course I knew what they were. From the Marlboro cigarette ads and the black velvet whiskey ads with Telly Savalas, or a slinky blonde nuzzling a glass, I knew. And I would marvel at the fact that just a half hour earlier we'd stood up from the pews singing, "Blessed Assurance, Jesus is mine," like we meant it, like we really meant it. But it wasn't just my father and my uncle. Some of my friends' fathers had porn also, and when those friends would show me where it was hidden or pull out a magazine, I would act surprised as though I'd never seen anything like it before in my life. I'd strive to be appalled and non-judgmental at the same time. Still, it was difficult to not think of those magazines later when sitting across a dinner table from these fathers at sleepovers, or when said fathers took us out for ice cream or let us ride around the neighborhood in the back of their truck. I would have never shown my father's porn to anyone else because I didn't want him seen in a bad light. I wanted that part of him to stay secret. I wanted that part of me to stay secret. There was, I'd come to know, a surface life that everyone lived, but there was a second sort of life, another level of existence left hidden, a place where seemingly regular people looked at dirty magazines, or maybe even did other things, things that could cause a child to disappear. Like a girl who's just walking along, maybe counting cracks in the sidewalk, trying to remember all the characteristics of mammals for no good reason. Or sisters inside their house, folding their new school clothes. It's dinner time, and they're waiting for their father to return from fishing, just like they did every day. But on that day, they weren't safe, not even in their home. There was an episode of The Twilight Zone that terrified me most when I was a child. Little Girl Lost. In it, a very young girl is heard crying, but her parents are unable to find her. She sounds as though she's behind the interior walls of the house somehow, but they can't reach her. A neighbor discovers she's gone through a portal into a fourth dimension. What caused me much anxiety was the fact that a child could be heard but not found, that a thing, permanent seeming as a wall, could give way to a space in which you could be lost forever, that you could cry and no one could save you. In the show, her father, with the help of their dog, is able to pull her out, but the possibility of her not being found seemed just as probable. I'd read my daddy's books on the paranormal and supernatural, books with lingo that made all of it sound so scientific. Crop circles created by aliens, demonic possessions, and ghosts breaking dishes or pushing people down the stairs. In them were unexplained disappearances, too. People vanishing into thin air just around a bend or within feet of others nearby. It was probable. A little girl could vanish on a street in the middle of the afternoon. Her last good thoughts, her last good feelings, what were they? Before she entered this gap in time, this portal only as wide as an opened car door. Thank you.